Here we go with Chapter 3, the Queen's Gambit Declined Exchange Variation. And the reason this gets a whole chapter is because after d4, d5, c4, c6, there's a lot of lines where white makes a move and we play e6. And if white takes, we don't want to take back with the c-pawn. Because what happens then is we get a Slav exchange, but in a line that doesn't match our Slav exchange repertoire. So what we're recommending is when we have this triangle formation and then white takes, at that point we're going to take with the e-pawn. So that's why we have this whole chapter on Queen's Gambit Declined Exchange Variation, and you can get this out of multiple move orders. So we see knight
so
f3.
we're going to go, so we're going to go e6, consistent with our other chapters. And here we're going to look at the move c takes. So Matt just explained why we don't want to do e takes here. Perfectly fine move, just doesn't quite fit in with our repertoire. E takes, and here we have a branching point. So we're going to focus on kind of early deviations and the times of 22 line moves where we hang a piece and get it back. Not this chapter, so we're going to play it a little more calm here. Knight f3. So this is a branching point. So we'll look at knight f3 first. What is our plan here, Matt?
So what we're going to do is we're going to play bishop to f5. That's the strongest square for this bishop, cutting through the white position. And sometimes you'll note that the queen will come to c2 early on for white just to prevent this bishop f5 move. So we're going to park that bishop there as soon as we're given the chance. Now after the main move, bishop to f4, this is where sort of like our ChessGoals wrinkle. So in a lot of the ChessGoals courses, we look for like a move that's a little bit offbeat, but also scores well, or it plays for the initiative. We're recommending here queen to b6. So what's going to happen is we're hoping that as you become more familiar with this chapter and playing these lines in your games, you start to get really comfortable with all these queen b6 variations, and your opponent might see that move and they kind of be taken aback a bit like, oh, queen b6, how am I supposed to play this? And you're ready to go. Like you've seen a lot of the ideas out of this position.
Yep, so we're going to look at a couple different moves for white. So queen d2, and after we'll look at queen b3. So queen d2 first. Here we're going to just develop normally, get our knight out. Kind of eyeing up knight e4 square in the future. Maybe not, well, actually, yes, right away. So e3, knight e4.
Yeah.
So challenging this knight, hitting the queen so white can't just ignore it. So very dynamic move here. Coming very quick into white's side of the board.
And white's got to be careful, like I highlighted with that arrow. Bishop to b4 ideas could potentially pin that queen to the white king. So we've disconnected this bishop from this diagonal. Or we didn't disconnect it, white did by playing e3, but now we're going to take advantage of this with really quick dynamic play. So the most common move is knight takes e4, but it's worth mentioning that after this stronger move, queen c1, we can develop with bishop to d6, we can play knight d7. It's going to be a small edge for black. But let's look at this common move. Knight takes e4 and just show what happens. D takes e4, threatening this. Queen to c2, only move using this little counter tactic. So what should we do here?
Yes, so we can't take the knight, but then white is going to get our bishop, and that's not really what we want here. So instead of that, we're going to develop rapidly and with a sneaky idea. So knight a6. The main idea is just coming here, is that right?
Yeah, and another point that I should bring up, the way to remember this is after e takes f3, queen takes f5, there was this queen c8 check idea when our knight was back on b8. So it also kind of helps shore up that tactic. So now we are threatening the quick e takes f. And then like Jesse said, this knight is also coming to b4, where he's targeting that square on d3. So now knight d2 for white, knight b4, here it comes. Heading to one of these two squares, knight d5 or knight d3.
Yep, so white needs to save their queen, queen b1. And here I'm losing the move. Okay, so here we're not going to commit the knight anywhere yet, because we're going to leave our options open. So instead, we're just going to develop and play bishop e7, looking to castle kingside. So we do have knight d3 check in mind. We can take, and now this pawn is looking very strong, being defended by the bishop. We can also add defenders with the queen someday. And after that, we're going to play quick g5 and just attack on the king side.
Yeah,
Maybe
so,
if we attack on the king side, we should go queenside castle.
yeah, there's really two different plans here. You could kingside castle, like you mentioned, and go for c5 and put the rooks in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that works well is because white's pieces are a little bit disconnected on this back rank. Like even after knight d3 gets played, takes, we have the bishop pair, but this d3 pawn also kind of ties the queen down. So that's one way to play it, castle and c5. The other way to play it is leave the king in the middle and go g5, h5 and harass this bishop, keep pushing the pawn. So we can kind of play on either flank. It's up to you. It's kind of a matter of taste at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at the other defense of the b2 pawn now. So instead of queen d2, we'll look at queen to b3, and this one gives us a slight advantage. So how should we deal with queen to b3 offering this immediate queen trade?
Yes, so we of course could take the queen and kind of isolate these pawns, but instead we're just going to play for development. So again, knight f6. Taking the queen, again, totally fine move, but we can let white capture our queen and maybe open up our rook and threaten, or just like have that pressure on the half open a file.
And
So
it's a small difference. So like Jesse said, no problem taking the queen. The reason I recommended knight f6 first is because we're giving white one chance to make a strategic error. We're giving white the chance to take our queen on b6, giving us the half open a file. And if that happens, there's a lot of structures that look like this. The plan is to push this pawn up the board. And black's really having fun in these positions. So that's the only difference. We're giving white that one chance to mess up strategically. But after e3, we are going to go with this queen trade. A takes b. So what should we do from here?
yeah, so we have a pretty balanced position right now. I think we're just going to go for development and play chess. So knight b7, develop a piece, bishop b4, so nice active square. Notice this bishop cannot really be kicked from this square since their a pawn is now on the b file.
Would you call that an outpost for the bishop?
I would say yes, but black is going to be able to kick us with a knight someday. Like maybe the castle get here, so it's a nice square for the bishop, but it's not there forever or anything. But yes, outpost.
I put it in quotes. I wasn't sure.
White castles, and again we have this knight e4 move, kind of getting into white's business.
And this is something that it's good to know because it's not a natural strategic idea. You know, you might think, well, can't white just take and make us take back with the d pawn? Yes, they can do that. But the issue is if knight takes e4, d takes e4, it kicks this knight off of f3, and we still have this bishop on f4 kind of lingering out here that we can attack, right? So that gives us more space actually, and the d pawn is not a threat, right? So we don't have to really be concerned about that d pawn not being blockaded. So just something to keep in mind. The main move though is rook f to c1, and now we're recommending a6. And we still have a slight edge here, and one plan that we can go for, g5, h5, kingside attack. I like to play the positions this way, Jesse. I love the kingside pawn storms, as you know, especially when Stockfish doesn't complain about them, which it doesn't here. And with these bishop and knight lined up on the f file, it's a very natural plan. And we can play king e7 or castle queenside. Really, it's a nice position. But if you don't want to do that, you can castle kingside and play on the queen side. So that's another option as well.
Yeah, I'm just wondering after g5 why they can't just take it, or maybe take here first.
Okay,
I guess
so
we're just going to play for the open file.
like let's say here, yeah, maybe we could prep it, f6. That's a good point. There's
Okay.
probably not enough play to immediately play g5. It's like 0.4 for white. But if you start with f6, this is a more balanced stockfish position. g5 coming next.
Okay.
So yeah, very good point. We don't want to... I mean, it's up to you. You could sack that pawn, but just be aware that it's a sacrifice.